anyone who's serious about their health should be getting a comprehensive blood test at least every year, getting multiple free testosterone draws, at least 2, ideally 3 if we're going to put a number on it, but more is better, over, a month period. Lack of masculinity is not inherently feminine. It's emasculated. It's weak and soft. And this is what the younger generation are coming up as. But the problem is that they're all suffering.
So we talk about some diagnostics here. How do we accurately test for low testosterone? Is one blood test sufficient? If yes, why? If no, why? And which tests are recommended?
I don't think one test is ever sufficient. And, people could argue, different circumstance that would make it more sufficient, in terms of if the numbers absolutely crashed out or something like that. If your free testosterone comes back, if we're going to talk picomole per liter, which typically the reference range these days is like 200 to 600, which is insane. But just to kind of give like a barometer, if your free testosterone comes back at 10 on that reference range, I mean, you have a chance it's a lab error, but, if you're doing everything right and your levels come back that low, it's probably pretty accurate. But we ideally want to look at multiple tests, and ideally we want to look at multiple tests over multiple years, ideally. But I don't think anyone should ever make a hypogonadism diagnosis of one blood test because of how much that blood work will fluctuate. When we're looking at a free testosterone blood check, we are looking at how much free testosterone being unbound, which has a very short half-life, was circulating on that morning at that time when you got the blood taken out of your arm. And very often, I have guys who, they're meant to fast for it, they don't fast. They go, oh yeah, on the weekend I had 15 beers on Saturday night. Or they were like, oh, I was at a funeral on the Friday before. Or, just like circumstances that absolutely don't reflect their usual day-to-day. So I think it's very important to get multiple snapshots when we're looking at a free testosterone diagnosis. And I think a lot of people are apprehensive to get that because blood work, depending on where you live, can be expensive. But testosterone replacement therapy is for life. And I would strongly encourage guys to, if you don't have access to historical blood work, and I think that anyone who's serious about their health should be getting a comprehensive blood test at least every year, maybe every 6 months if you've got something going on, but every year, so that you can get multiple points of data and track a trajectory. But if you don't have that data, I think getting multiple free testosterone draws, at least 2, ideally 3 if we're going to put a number on it, but more is better, over, a month period. And it's also very important that, again, guys are looking at a scenario of going, I'm going to look after myself as well as possible to see what levels I can produce naturally, rather than seeing the levels that you're producing if you're just eating junk, drinking booze, not going outside, not looking after yourself properly. And there's a lot of important markers that we must look at when making a holistic diagnosis of low testosterone. And that's why when I get blood work, I like to get blood work of everything together. So I want to see on the same day, all drawn at once, your lipid panel, your thyroid panel. I want to see your gonadotropins. I want to see your kidneys. I want to see, I don't know if I said liver already. I want to see the liver. I want to see red blood cells, white blood cells. We want to see everything all together so that we can ascertain if the testosterone is low, if it's coming from a cause which can be resolved. Because some causes of low testosterone in the blood work can be resolved. And particularly what we want to see is if luteinizing hormone is elevated, because if luteinizing hormone is elevated, this is a diagnostic for primary hypogonadism. And what this means is that the brain has started screaming at the testicles to make more testosterone because it can sense and feel that there's not enough testosterone in the body. So this means the testicles are not responding to the signal from the brain. If this is the case, there's not a lot that can really be done here. And this is called a primary issue where the testicles are the problem. This can be due to age and injury. So if that's the case, and your luteinizing hormone levels are elevated, even if your free testosterone is not that low, your body is signaling that it's trying to make more. So you do have a signal biologically there that the amount of testosterone that you are currently making is insufficient or it's on its way out. Now, if we're in a situation where the luteinizing hormone is suppressed, 2 or below, that's giving us an indicator that the body is currently actively suppressing testosterone production. This is a problem for 2 reasons. One, you're doing something wrong. And whatever you're doing wrong is probably fucking up more things than just your testosterone production. People tend to get very like myopic, like singularly focused on just testosterone. There are many more health problems that you can get from living like shit. And it's really important that they all get looked at with equal importance. So if that's a scenario, we want to be looking at that. But the other reason why we need to consider this very seriously is that if you're, again, going back to car analogies, I use car analogies all the time. I did a whole lecture about cars. If we're looking at the body suppressing luteinizing hormone, your body is pumping the brakes. It's going, slow this down. This is not a priority. We are focusing on survival, not reproduction. So your body is pumping the brakes on this system in the body. So if you come in like a dumbass and go, I'm smarter than you, body, I'm going to pump the accelerator while you're pumping the brakes and put a bunch of testosterone in, what would happen if that was a car? It would stutter forward. It wouldn't be a smooth ride forward. So you're not going to have this experience that you're hoping to achieve. You're going to have side effects. And this is what happens all the time. If I went onto Reddit or some kind of forum where people are trying to troubleshoot their TRT issues, assuming they've got a protocol that's at least 80% decent, the number one root cause of the side effects is what caused the testosterone suppression in the first place, which hasn't been resolved, which is generally diet. So junk food, drugs, alcohol, not doing enough exercise. Those are generally the big ones. Drugs, alcohol, junk food, by far the biggest causes here. Insulin resistance, a big factor as well. But I guess the holistic human experience aspect of that is that a lot of the time people feel like shit, so they do things in the short term to make them feel better, and then that makes them feel more like shit, and then this vicious cycle repeats because suffering is something that's quite subjectively difficult to experience. So again, there has to be compassion for guys in this area, but there also has to be realistic and pragmatic outcomes that we look at. So that's really important when looking to diagnose the free testosterone deficiency. Is it a primary or a secondary issue?
If you've just started TRT, it is completely normal to feel overwhelmed and confused. There's a lot of new territory to cover, and there is a lot of conflicting information. I wrote TRT 101 so that you can have everything that you need to know in an instruction manual in one place that you can refer back to, that you can have all the questions answered before they even come up. TRT 101 is my best practice approach for TRT from start to finish, and it contains everything that you need to avoid all the challenges and pitfalls that I've seen come up in my clients over the last 5 years. You can check it out via the link below.
The other issue that we get now with younger guys, which isn't identified in the literature, I've named this generational hypogonadism. I hope it catches on. If it does, I came up with it. And this is when I see younger guys who are doing everything right, sometimes to the point that it's like neurotic and weird, like ultimate biohacker extraordinaire. And their luteinizing hormone levels are mid-range. So it's not suppressed, it's not elevated. So they've got their brains going, yep, we are producing the optimal amount of testosterone. And their free testosterone is like 100, 150, and they feel like dog shit. And in my opinion, this is the long-term outcome of what happens when people's parents and grandparents get exposed to this toxic diet and lifestyle, and then it's just multiple generations of reproduction down the line, and this is what's happening to the younger generation. And, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but we can argue if this is a deliberate intervention in terms of, weakening the population so they're better tax slaves, or whether it's a unknown consequence of just things getting too heavily industrialized and everything becoming too wrapped in plastic and hyper-processed garbage, and this is just the outcome of what happens when people grow up with this stuff. So in those guys, that can be very tricky for them because they're being told, oh, well, if you're young and you're healthy, then you should have optimal testosterone levels. But it's going, hey, my levels aren't suppressed. There's nothing wrong with my testosterone. I'm at my body's full capacity to produce these hormones, and I have hypogonadism symptoms, and I have levels lower than an alcoholic obese baby boomer. And I think this is a real problem. And there was this really interesting study. I'll have to find it for you because it wasn't the intention of the study to look at it. It was actually one of the few interventional studies they did with aromatase inhibitors on men who were not on testosterone. And it was on an anastrozole. And what they noted, there was a younger group and an older group. And I'm not going to get the number right, but it was like under 25 and over 60 or something like that. And the authors noted that in this group, these two population groups, under 25 and over 60, that the testosterone levels did not differ. And they went, oh, the testosterone levels were the same. That's a problem. Like, that's not how it's supposed to be, because testosterone levels, assuming that you're healthy, are meant to be on a relatively linear decline from whenever they peak, 16 to 22, depending on who you ask, and until you die. It should be a relatively linear decline. So if it's like this now because the generational gap in hormone levels is so massive because the lifestyle and the diet and everything being so urbanized has changed so quickly, if this is where we're at, no wonder so many young people are suffering and not doing well. And I think if you go outside, one of the most stark things that I looked at was I graduated high school in 2009, and when I went to look at the the photos of like all the year 12s at the end of their graduation, so in Perth they're 17. When you look at the graduating class from 1999, 2009, and 2019, we are looking at a vastly different breed of human. Like the 1999 17-year-olds could eat the 2019-year-olds for like 17-year-olds for breakfast. Like, they looked 5 or 6 years younger. They looked like boys. It was men versus boys. And this is something that we see every day. I mean, most guys would go outside and look at the average 20-year-old these days. I mean, the older generation know it. And they are very emasculated. That's the right word. They're very emasculated. They're very soft. I don't like saying that the younger generation is feminine, because feminine is a good thing. Lack of masculinity is not inherently feminine. It's emasculated. It's weak and soft. And this is what the younger generation are coming up as. But the problem is that they're all fucking suffering, and they know they're suffering, and they're not able to get the help they need because they go to the doctor and they get sent in and out on, SSRIs in 10 minutes, which just makes the whole problem worse. So, bit of a tangent. Apologies.
The tricky thing with testosterone that we have to look at is that testosterone is good for you up to the point that it's not. A lot of the anecdotal outcomes as well really conflates bioidentical testosterone with anabolic steroids. Finding something productive and stressful that's got that nice balance that if you got out the other side of it, you'd be like, that would be meaningful. When I was going through my rehabilitation for my brain injury, if it wasn't for the testosterone, I wouldn't have gotten through it, because that was just this insurmountable period of what I would call living hell.